G'day everybody, welcome to Marketing Theatre. I'm really excited to be back and excited to have with me once again, Sherryl Lee second. Welcome Sherryl Lee.
Hi Paul, great to be here.
Good to have you here. So today we want to keep being practical. We're going to talk about content and scheduling content. So types of content, when, how, tools to do it, I guess, that sort of thing. So did you want to kick us off with anything particular?
I think probably the first thing for me would be the problem, where to start, why you want to schedule your social media. And a couple of things come up for me that make a huge impact. And the first one is obviously time. When you hit your social media and you're doing something each day, you don't necessarily have the time to create the content for that day, or B, the mental space.
Yeah.
So, when you're running a theatre company or a business or whatever, it takes a lot of time.
Sure does.
And the other thing is, if you're not working to a plan and thinking ahead, what you do isn't necessarily going to have the impact that you hope it might have. There's no direction for it. And you're really just putting stuff up on social media that isn't as good as it could be necessarily, because you fall into the trap of quantity over quality.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's definitely something I struggle with. Is I know I need to block. I do it better when I block out blocks of time and just sit and focus on building out content for one particular channel at a time. So time blocking for me is a massive game changer when it comes to that kind of thing, and creating content, not just creating it, but scheduling it. How important is that for you?
It's hugely important, especially when you're working, for me, working with more than one client at a time, multiple channels. If I had to switch my head from one, plan to another, I just wouldn't be able to keep up, and it would take up my entire day. I think what people don't realize is how much content you have to create, how much you really should be creating to make it have an impact. And that's where people get a surprise.
It really does take a good solid block of time to get into a flow state for whether it's any kind of creative practice. And I find my content marketing is actually exactly the same. I need to be in a block of time with a flow state that kind of just, I get going, and then I can just do heaps and heaps and heaps. And that process gets faster and faster if I can block myself off a couple of hours just for one channel at a time.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of time, when you say a couple of hours to, schedule it. But if you really wrote down every moment that you had spent the week preceding just shotgunning it, I think you'd get a bit of a surprise. People would get a real shock as to how much time they actually consume doing it piecemeal.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And we've talked before about content, and the thing that I really like and took away from one of those conversations was your idea of the 4-3-2. You were talking about Instagram at that point and having different buckets of content. So just take us through again the idea of content buckets, and that idea of, different categories of content and the types of things that people can share.
Well, the purpose of it is to not bore your audience and to get across the message or messages that you want to be able to convey over a period of time. Social media, when you use it purely as an advertising platform, A, it doesn't work. B, you don't build relationship. And C, you bore your audience to tears because that's all you do. So it comes back to, again, something very near and dear to my heart, which is planning.
Yeah.
And way back before you get to the tactics of social media, you need to have a plan as to why you're using social media to promote your theatre company, your work, your show, your career, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because it's not really to sell tickets. It is, but that's an indirect thing. So at the beginning, there's a lot more to it, but let's just go to that idea of what they call content pillars, which is the things that you value, the messages you want to get across. So one of them will be to promote your show, only one of them. And if you look at Instagram main feed, you're looking at, say, the first nine on a grid.
Yeah.
Think of Instagram as a magazine for who you are, your personal career or your theatre career, whatever it is. It's a magazine. And if you opened a magazine, every page would not be exactly the same thing. So if someone goes to your profile, in the first 9 squares of the grid at any one time, you have to be able to tell the story of who you are and what you do. You can't do that if every square says buy tickets, or every square is indeed a great shot, as it might be a great shot of your show, because that's not the entirety of who you are or who your theatre company is.
Yeah.
So the easy thing for 432 is you're either entertaining, educating, or inspiring. So you throw in the idea of also promotion. At the most, 20% of those 9 squares should be buy tickets or something to do with your show. You might have four squares that might show who you are, the people behind the scenes, lots of fun, all that sort of thing. An inspiration post might be a quote that is relevant to whatever it is you're trying to promote at the time. Education might be something from the industry that is, again, relevant, indirectly relevant to what you're doing, but it's not the same message. It is, but in an indirect way. You're showing your whole person, your whole personality, the values, the integrity, everything. You're building a relationship, and a relationship is not just one-sided, me telling you what I want. It's me sharing who I am in an authentic way and getting to know your audience from the other side. So if you keep in mind that your 9 grid or even your 12 grid on your Instagram, for instance, is the same thing, I'm bored before we get too much further. So having that plan going in, and that's where scheduling comes in, is that you know ahead what you want. So you can schedule it, save you time, but you can be confident in that the message that you've got going out is entertaining, interesting, educational, inspirational, and by and by going to sell your tickets.
You're not saying that you cannot sell product, tickets, whatever on social media. We absolutely can use social media to sell. The point is to not just use it to try and be a sales funnel and to try and be your selling portal. That's the key, because that's when people are going to switch off, because it's like anything. People are happy to buy, but they hate being sold to. So, you don't want to just make that message constantly being about sales. So just want to make that very clear to anyone that's watching or listening. You can sell through social media, and it's very effective. Facebook is, a multi-billion-dollar company off the back of advertising. It works.
And they want your money.
Absolutely, they want your money. You've done quite a bit of work with theatre companies, independent theatre companies, community theatre companies. Well, what's some of the advice that you've given them that's helped turn it around? I've watched a couple of the companies that I've seen you working with, and I've seen the shift in the type of output in regards to particularly Instagram that they've put out there. So what are you finding people are kind of just doing and getting wrong? What are the quickest wins that they can get to turn some things around?
With Instagram, there are a few, but the quickest win you could start with straight away is treating your main feed and the stories section entirely differently. So think of your main feed again, thinking of that magazine. So it's highly curated, not in that it looks like, the typical influencer type feed, but that it has got those different elements of who you are based on the plan that you had going in, hitting on the different content pillars of telling your message, who you are, building that relationship. The everyday things, the things that are not what they call evergreen, might be, the fun behind the scenes, spontaneous. It can be selling tickets, more interaction. Go in your stories, because they're gone in 24 hours. So you can be posting more often to that. You can also have you get more interaction on stories with all your stickers and your polls and having all that bit of fun, and you can be more relaxed. It's not precious or, overly produced. You definitely don't want that. It's more real. And you can use it in all sorts of ways. I mean, you can build your highlights out. You can use Instagram almost like a website, in that you can have in the pinned highlight section underneath your bio.
Yeah,
you can have, constantly changing highlights that are about your current show. You could have a one highlight that is pinned there for the cast, and you can constantly be adding things that people want to know about the cast, behind the scenes. You think of the various different elements that people will go to, because the engagement is higher on stories. And as far as the algorithm, that terrible word algorithm, but as far as Instagram is concerned, the stories gets better engagement. And if you're not active on stories, it reads you as a less active account and doesn't release as much of your feed posts. So you don't post as much to your main feed. You might only post there officially 3 times a week, but your stories are constantly going and building relationship.
And that's what's helping to generate more contact and more engagement.
That's right. Facebook, it's different. It's a different audience to begin with. But you can't say with my theatre company, I love Instagram.
Yeah.
But you can't just have an Instagram account. It doesn't matter what you think about Facebook, whether you think it's for the oldies or whatever. Unfortunately, it reaches and functions in an entirely different way. The number one way is its shareability of posts. It's not as easy to do that on Instagram, and audience behavior is different in that they don't tend to do that as much as they do, just because Facebook functionality is simple to share a post. So that's the number one thing. The other thing is functions on Facebook, like your events page, must have. People don't underestimate how effective events page, well set out events in your Facebook page can be, because it is the one thing that I can go to your page and pick up and share it with my group of friends. And if you've set it up correctly, that everything you want people to know about your show is going with that event. Can't tell you the number of times gone, I want to support that production. I go to their Facebook page and there isn't one shareable item of content on there that I could send out. And I literally almost have to do up my own.
Wow.
Now, no one else other than a marketer or a publicist like me is going to bother doing that. And so when people don't know what to do, they do nothing.
Yep. Yeah, you got to make it easy for people.
You do. So it's the shareability. So Facebook is different. For both of them, one of the biggest impacts you can have is consistency of brand, visual brand. That shows up, it shows up in both, but it's in your face with Instagram.
Yeah.
And that can be as simple as consistently using the same fonts and 3 colors. Pick 3 colors. It can be 5, as long as they're all going together. But consistency of visual brand doesn't matter if you're not a designer. You don't have to pay a graphic designer. There are platforms you can use to do it simply.
So much free stuff out there that you can use now.
There is.
I mean, there's great apps for your phone. There's like Canva online is free Canva. And is amazing, and it's built out with a whole bunch of templates that make it easy to use. I want to come back to that in a second. I wanted to touch on something before I forget. The other thing about Facebook events that I really like is the fact that they are easily found. Once something's on Facebook and it goes into your feed, give it another day or two. If you're posting regularly, that's gone and it's impossible to find. And the thing about creating a Facebook event for anything that you're doing that has a date attached to it, or even if it's an evergreen thing, like I've just put online a link to a recording of our staged reading for Peter Abbott last year, and I'm using that as a way to sort of generate leads for the business. And I'm creating a Facebook event for that, even though there's going to be no dates particularly set for that. I haven't started yet. So do you know about being able to do that? Can you set something as a dateless event?
I really don't know about a dateless event. I've never done a dateless event. I do know there used to be a limit to how far ahead you could do it.
Yeah.
They used to limit that, but let me know, because
I'll
an
report
interesting
back.
Concept. Yeah.
I haven't started that one yet, but yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, go.
No, it's just going to, detail on events, but where were you heading?
No, I was going to go back onto the other Instagram thing we were talking about.
Where were we up to? Highlights, feed, SEO on that. Branding, visual branding.
Yeah, the branding stuff.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so you can do this simply. I mean, I work mostly with people that are doing things themselves. So beginnings is where my niche is. So if you have the budget for a graphic designer, use them. That's great.
Yeah.
But most people I work with don't. They do it themselves. So you've hit on Canva, brilliant platform. Now I use the pro version because I, build it out. But in Canva, a simple thing that you have to do is you have two brands running always when you have a theatre company, as their theatre company brand and the show brand.
Yep.
And they can be different but connected visually. Visual branding is not just your logo. The reason you have to be consistent is over time, people, after seeing, having various what they call touch points, seeing something pop up in their feed consistently in the same color, using the same fonts, styled in a similar way, they start to recognize that as you or your show. That builds familiarity, which builds confidence in you with them, which means they're one step or multiple steps closer to purchasing or feeling comfortable to spend their money with you. Yeah. So visual brand can be as simple as, going in and choosing, 3 to 5 colors. Keep it simple, go 3 colors that go together. And Canva will help you to do this. And where you pull those colors from can be from a favorite photo from the show. It can be from a logo you had designed. Wherever it is, those use those colors consistently in graphics, in font colors. Anytime you need to add a color, it's always those. Don't deviate. Don't feel like you can deviate. And fonts, 2 fonts, one for headings, one for body, and just use them all the time. You might get bored. Tough, because it really works. And it's, this is a long-term thing. Marketing is long-term.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference. It really, really does.
Yeah, I cannot recommend to anyone enough to actually just stop and put a little style guide together. I have a style guide for my standard company branding, and then when we put a show together, I do a mini style guide up for that show. So it'll have the generally two main colors that we're using. We might deviate a bit, but like for instance, my main branding is blue and yellow. So I've got, and they're on my logo, and so I've taken the 6-digit code to represent that color and put that in the style guide. So it's not just a yellow, it's always the same yellow. It's always the same purple. It's those sorts of things. And so I've just got that stored in a Word doc, and I've also got it stored in Trello. So I use Trello to document a whole bunch of stuff, because then it's in the cloud. And if I have a hard drive crash again,
oh, no.
Haven't had one for a while, praise the Lord, but the amount of stuff I've lost, So, but yeah, I've got just a basic style guide, which has got the main colors, the 6-digit codes that represent the 2 main colors, the font choices, all that stuff laid out. And whenever I'm creating something, I'll go back into that style guide, copy that code out. I should know it off by heart by now, you would think, but
I can never remember.
No, well, because then you're building it out for the shows and that sort of stuff. And so those shows will have a mini style guide with the colors and the fonts and the names. And then you can share that with your team, and everybody knows that's what you're using. And I cannot recommend that enough. Anything we can do to systemize what we do, to take the thinking out of it, is just so much better. So much better. So, I found that years ago, I started doing that, and it just simplifies everything.
Yeah, you're not having to think again when you sit down to do it. You know what has to be done. It just speeds the process up so much.
Yeah, that's right. And as you say, that consistency helps breed that consistent connection with your audience as well. So I'm playing with a few different ones. I've started something on one of my channels called Wordplay Wednesday, I think. So I've done that up as a template. I've done a little bit of stock footage video. So it's, I think it's an open book with a magnifying glass that comes out, and then the title appears, and then it pops onto a single plate where the word of the day, do you know the meaning of this word? And at the moment, they're all kind of from Shakespeare plays, looking through some of his vocabulary. But, it's consistent. It's the same little bit of video footage. It's the same fonts. The beautiful thing about that, when I create those now, is I can sit and burn out a whole bunch of those
Yeah.
because I'm only changing the text, the actual words. I'm changing the word of the day and then I'm changing the meaning out, and that's it. So I can sit and flick through the books, the dictionaries, whatever, and I can make a whole batch of those and then schedule them for the next
Yep.
X number of weeks. And so just that little, you see things like Throwback Thursdays and those sorts of things. Each one of those, can they have their own little bit of styling, do you think? Or should you keep it a
Yeah,
little
you
bit?
don't
Yeah,
have to.
that's what I
Yes,
think too.
absolutely. And that's the
Yeah.
beauty. No affiliation with anything that I use, by the way, but Canva, I just love it because I can go in for a company and just design a series of templates for, say, their Facebook posts.
Yep.
Different and just design 12 different things for that matter, using the same colors, same fonts, in different combinations, different styles, but they all blend and go together. But as you say, then each fortnight when I go in to create the next scheduled lot of content, I'm not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
I may have spent 4 or 5 hours, whatever, in the first place, but after that, then I'm just churning them out, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
The other things that I've come across that I really like, I've only used it a couple of times. I don't think you want to use it a lot, but you can get those apps on your phone that can, I'm sure if someone's more adept at Photoshop than I am, they could cut it up and do it this way, but you can tile out a single photo into 9 images or less or whatever, so that you can release one of those images in sequence, 9 posts, then creates a bigger image in your Instagram feed. And when you're scrolling through somebody's feed, those little moments where those big images that are made up of multiple tiles pop out, they look fantastic, and I just think some of those things that you can utilize to extend your content. So you might have one image, but that's 9 posts that you've got out of that one image now, because you're creating that macro image from the micro ones. So little, technology bits like that, just they help so much.
The trick that I would mention with that tactic is to make sure that the caption that you do, because you're going to be using a photo that in and of itself individually isn't much, it's in the overall that has its impact. So you're looking at, if you're going to post one section, one of those sub photos once a day or once every couple of days, make sure that the caption or the story you're putting with that, as that is actually got some substance to it, because we have short attention spans. You stretch that out over a week and you're not saying much, I'm losing interest already.
Yeah.
So you can have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah.
But make sure, I've seen that mistake made, that, there's just nothing. It's just, or release the whole photo, load it up in one day.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You've got to play with the timing
impact,
of it,
because that's what you're looking for, isn't it? The impact of those tiles.
The one I did was in the launch, in the lead up to a launch for the last board game that we made, and it was the cover image of the game, and it's a great little Easter bunny kind of image that the graphic designer did up. Looks fantastic, really great green, kind of pops off the screen. And we did that, I think 3 posts a day over 3 days to get the 9 images out. And each post that I put out, I tried to create a little bit of an intrigue story loop that was asking a question and kind of posing it, or, what could it be? Is it, it's coming? What is it? This kind of thing. So trying to create that story loop that people kind of get to, and then they might be a bit interested to come back and try and close that story loop out to find out what it is. And it was great. Great little bit of fun and little different sort of look for that Instagram page. So, but I think it's a really key point is, because they have to be done in sequence to work, you've got to work out what the timing of the release of that is for you that's going to actually still be effective. And as you say, you could do all 9 posts in one day, and you're not going to bug people with something like that where you're building on something across a day. Someone like Gary Vaynerchuk says that you should be doing, he's got a slide deck that actually shows you how to create hundreds of pieces of content from very few, by the way that you repurpose it, and you'll screenshot a tweet and then put that on Instagram and this kind of stuff. So being able to multi-use that content is vital, because as you said, time is of the essence. You just don't have time when you're running an indie show to be able to build out, so much unique style of content. But repurposing content and making it contextualized for the platform that you're going to post it to, 100%, absolutely do it.
I think people have got to realize that it helps to understand that only on Facebook, and Instagram's getting that way as well, the percentage of your followers who are actually going to see each post is less than 5%.
Yeah.
So, you say, you post 9 things in a day to get that mixed tile up. Well, the people who see it are the ones that interact with your account the most, because the algorithm learns that they want to. So, the reason for so much content is because few people actually see it at any one time.
Well, that's right. And the same 9 posts might not be seen by the same people. Like, as you say, because the algorithm messes with things, certain people might see the first post, those people might not see the second. And so just purely by putting all 9 of them out in a day, you might actually catch 1/3 to 2/3 of your organic audience, and hopefully the hashtags are bringing other people in and that sort of stuff as well. So what do you use to schedule your content?
At the moment, I'm using Later, later.com. There's a free version on the phone app. It also has a free version on a laptop app. I hate typing, because I'm a long form caption writer. I hate typing on my phone. It's just, so much risk for error, and it's slow. So with Later, I can it's linked or synced to my phone, and it sends me a notification, and I can still manually, that's to Instagram, by the way. I can I can schedule everything on a calendar on my laptop, be typing my 2,200 characters and get it all done, photos and everything. And then when I schedule it and the scheduling time comes up, it sends me a notification on my phone, and I post it manually. You can have it post automatically. I prefer to have the control, actually adding in tags and links. I just prefer that double checking myself.
Interesting.
And playing with the placement as well, because sometimes when it copies and pastes into Instagram, it takes away the spaces that I've created between lines. I like to have a lot of white space.
Yeah, I hate the way that it bunches text. And when I'm organically typing in Instagram, I'll do the enter, full stop, enter to create the space and space it out. But what I have found is a lot of the schedulers I've played with is when you're actually using a scheduler on a PC and you enter that space through, it does transfer through and it creates the space, which is amazing. I didn't realize Later was one of the few that actually can post directly to Instagram.
Yeah.
There's not many of those.
No, and I just worry about it. I like to get control.
Yeah, well, that might not be something, it depends on their relationship with Facebook as well, but I know that there are a couple of other scheduling tools out there that do it, but it's on what they call a grandfathered API, and that API is actually soon being discontinued. Yeah. So there's one called Social Mako, which it's pretty cheap actually. It's like $10 a month. And I've had a look at it. It's pretty good. I chose not to go with it, however, because the few posts that I tried to test with it, I just kept getting a blue spinny thing in the front of the screen that it was just taking forever to try and get the content up. So I didn't end up buying into that one. But they're one of the few left, I think, with the grandfathered API as well. So whether Later ends up having to change, or whether their relationship is established enough that they'll be able to keep that.
And things constantly change.
Yeah, be fingers crossed.
There's a great one, an Australian one, started by a woman by the name of Christy Lawrence, and a version called Plan, Plann.
Okay.
Brilliant. It's actually really, really good. It's been around for a few years. It's just starting to get traction. That's all. But that's my favorite one. It's a paid one. I use the paid version of that. But, and again, I work on the laptop and manually post through to my phone. But it has great insights into what hashtags perform really well for me. Great further insights than what just Instagram provide. And if you're using Instagram, even if you're not using a scheduling tool, you should be keeping an eye on your insights to understand your audience a little bit. But Plan they really it's very smooth, very clean, very easy to use. I love the fact that it's an Australian company.
That's great.
And yeah, so, and it's not expensive. None of them are super expensive, but the fact that there is a free version in later that, you know, I mean, it limits your functionality, but
Yes.
you get enough out of it for the
Yeah.
average person to do.
I know
if you're
some.
only using one account.
Yeah, that's it. And I know some small businesses that run on later and just use the free account because they are only using it for a single account. I've got 3 at least across Facebook that I'm posting to, and sometimes other groups that I'm part of. So, you know, the free accounts aren't going to work for me, and I'm stingy, so I don't necessarily want to pay a monthly subscription. So I'm constantly on the lookout for lifetime deals. And I just bought one actually for another scheduler. I bought into a scheduler 18 months ago, got a lifetime deal on that, and they just shut down before COVID hit to do maintenance for 12 weeks. And I don't know that we'll see them back. I have no idea. So I've actually just bought another one on a lifetime deal. And I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on. And so many of the schedulers have really good analytics built into the back end of them. So they can really tell you how your posts are performing and the types of engagement that you're getting and which hashtags are performing better. All that kind of analytic stuff is so important. One of the things I love about the one that I'm on at the moment, it's called Publer. They don't have Instagram built into that yet. And I was okay with that because I know it's coming. And then they've been trying to get the API sorted with Facebook, but it's just, you know, there's all, you imagine the amount of people trying to integrate with Facebook, it takes time. So they're actually building their Instagram integration through another application, which will mean that they have something in a couple of weeks. But they also, and most of them do allow you to post to Facebook groups, Facebook business pages, Instagram business pages, LinkedIn, Twitter. They're also getting YouTube soon, and they've got a couple of others in the works, Pinterest. So it's quite amazing the level of integration a lot of these scheduling tools are developing at the moment. One of the things about Publer, which is the one that I purchased into, I really like, is I can create a post and then I can basically pull that post back up and resave it and repurpose it for the other platforms. Some of them are fantastic in that with the scheduling tools that you can type a post out once and then it will automatically say, well, look, you probably want to use this on Facebook and Instagram and whatever. So it will create separate posts for you with that one post, and then you can adjust them based on the nativity for that platform. So you can take the hashtags out of it for Facebook and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So just the scheduling stuff, the tools that are available out there at the moment are incredible. And I just cannot believe the amount of time it saves me being able to just sit down at one platform and be able to burn through the creation of a number of posts that are relevant for what we're working on, schedule them, and not have to think about it for another few days or a week or something. It just makes such a big difference to be able to plan ahead and schedule in that way. The other one that I'm using at the moment, which I definitely want to share with people if you're not aware of it, and it doesn't work for your personal page, these are only for business pages and groups, is actually owned by Facebook, and it's one that Facebook created called Creator Studio. And so that allows you to post instantly into your Facebook groups, your business pages, and also Instagram personal page, Instagram business page, and IGTV, which is still very relevant despite it kind of not getting the traction that they wanted. So I'm playing between those two at the moment, Publer and Creator Studio. I'm using Creator Studio basically for Instagram, doing all my Facebook stuff through the scheduling tool, regardless of that. So yeah, scheduling tools, definitely get on them. I just, the time you save being able to work through one of those is insane.
One of the reasons that I like to use Later and Plan is their training.
Nice.
When people start with social media, they tend to, and they're promoting or using it for a theatre company or business pages, they tend to use it the way they do their personal social media, and it's very different. But there's so much information out there, where do you start? And I found Later in particular, or, you know, getting a newsletter, regular notes, and that they are one of the few that are always up to date with the constant changes in Instagram.
Yeah.
So to have those little bits of tactical advice on what's the latest thing in Instagram coming from that from later from that scheduling tool is really helpful, because you're constantly learning something to improve how you do that, how you approach it, banned hashtags, using carousel posts over single photos in your feed, because you use a carousel post more than 2 or 3 photos, more than one photo in your main feed, because Instagram will reserve that post to people who didn't interact with it the first time. But that's why you see sometimes the second photo in a series that you just scrolled through before, they reserve it to you until you interact with it.
Interesting.
So all these little things that, if you sat down and tried to learn everything about Instagram, you would go mad in one go. You can't do it. You just have to begin and experiment and keep working at it. So to have this little drip feed of up to date, the latest training, and it's fun too. They do it in a really great way.
Well, that's another really great thing to look out for then if anyone's looking for scheduling tools. So there are some really great ones out there. I think the reality is that most of them are pretty much doing the same thing, but they're the little extras that you can get with some of them that make a massive difference to your ability to scale quickly and to being able to do a lot more. Let's talk about how far out you schedule. How far out do you schedule stuff? So if someone's putting on a show and they're looking at, scheduling some stuff, I mean, everyone's always scared, but if I schedule it, it's not organic, it's not spontaneous,
It is. You just plan spontaneity. That's what it is.
Yeah.
No, the trick with scheduling is that you have to have a plan. And that's where the content calendar comes in.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can't have the spontaneous content as well, because you can never have too much. If it's good content, I'm talking quality, you can never have too much. But you can always reschedule or shift a scheduling if I schedule out 2 weeks in advance. That's as much as I can do. And it also allows for things to change. Especially doing a show when things do spontaneously happen, or you get this great photo and you think that would be amazing. It would get a lot of traction. I want to post that 24 hours before I'm going to do a post about ticket sales.
Yeah.
The reason, and I'll put a pin in cast albums and come back to that, and I'll tell you a little trick. But
I'll make a note.
Make a note. But you just go into this is why with Facebook, I tend to schedule natively in Facebook in the publishing tools, because I just go in there and change the scheduling and add something else in. So you're not anchored in, you're not stuck in concrete. It's still fluid. It just means that that you've got your bases covered, the things that you have to have. So with the content calendar, do you want me to hit in the content calendar?
Let's talk about that.
More detail of that. Okay, so this is the thing that I just use an Excel file. I'm old school because it's evergreen. It goes year after year after year. In an Excel file, I have evergreen dates, date, month, day. And then I list every platform that I use across the top. And then I have an events column. And in that events column, I put in absolutely everything that is happening with my theatre company's production. And that can be everything from audition days to bump in to bump out. It can be set building days. It can be boring things like meetings, absolutely everything that's going on. I then go to, and you can find these anywhere, but I've got favorite websites that give me all national holidays, gives me social holidays, which are things like Donut Day, all these sorts of things from around Australia, sometimes international, but they're not necessarily as applicable. And I add in relevant, or sometimes not ones that I'm sure will be relevant, but I put them into that calendar as well, because it gives you other content. For instance, I was doing a production of Pirates of Penzance, and that was being performed or producing at the same time as International Speak Like a Pirate Day.
Oh, so perfect.
Incorporating that into the production. So it's things like that. So filling out a content calendar with all these events, local events like the Echo and you know, the various festivals that are on. You never know at this stage of a content calendar how you might use it or how it might be relevant to your production. So you put it in. And then for the next 2 weeks, I'll have a look at those days and see, is there anything that I want to use? So for instance, audition day, you're obviously going to do various posts that are relevant to auditions. So you write that under Facebook, Instagram stories, whatever you want to do. 6 weeks out from, say, the launch of a show, I've got a process for the 6 weeks leading up to that promotes the launch. So everything I do will sort of indirectly have an angle towards that. And then when we launch the show, then I've got a week, which is talking about launch. So that will be introducing cast. It'll be where you can buy tickets. It'll be what happened at the launch event, all that sort of thing. So I've got these blocks of direction of where I'm heading. What I'm saying is that when you've got the content calendar, you then know what it is you're going to be posting for 2 weeks in advance. And you make sure that means you know that you have covered when you're supposed to release tickets. You've promoted that. You know, when you've got to, you know, introduce the cast or the various events, you know, everything is covered. And then all the spontaneous stuff can happen anyway, and it's a bonus.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's easy to actually do that because you know what the timeline of your show is roughly going to be. So I think that's smart. And I'll be honest, I hadn't even thought about putting meetings and stuff in there. It's normally the key events that I'll look at, but I'm going to dig deeper next time and actually really throw everything in there. And
it's behind the scenes. People love behind the
I
scenes.
know. Yeah, they do. They do. And that's one of the reasons actually is part of my content for shows and that sort of thing. I've been doing a lot of video and actually, you know, looking to create that on our YouTube channel for the theatre company. I got in on some of the actors during some rehearsals just with my phone, but literally got in filmically super close to really get some key moments and emotions and that sort of stuff. And then, you know, drop that stuff out onto Instagram as little, you know, 30-second videos, or actually we put some up on TikTok as well, just little moments like that work really well for TikTok. So, you know, just being able to do that and having that bank of stuff there that can be scheduled across, you know, to support any of those activities. But, you know, even just a photo of you having the meeting, going, hey, we're production meeting with the team, that sense that people are collaborating and working on something is exciting. It's exciting to people that something's being built, and that it's great.
I think with the content calendar, part of it for me has come from the administrative roles that I've played in theatre company. So, and that for me is the impact it has on other volunteers. When you're doing this within a theatre company, and I've worked in some very large ones, you are working with people who have time constraints, and you can't come up to someone, you know, 24 hours notice and say, can you do? It's not respecting people's time, you know.
It's true.
If you're doing a photo shoot and you go 2 weeks out with your costuming team and say, we're going to have a photo shoot in 2 weeks time, can you be ready? And they're going, nah, you know, I'm busy doing it. It's not going to endear you to people and not going to help you do your job, and it's not building relationship within a team as well. So having that content calendar allows you to look right out and say to your team members, to your cast, do whatever. And your Mother's Day thing is leading up. You might want to do a series of stories, you know, videos with cast, you know, of messages to their mum because they're at rehearsal on Mother's Day, or that sort of thing. You're looking at looking after your own time so that you can plan better, but B, you're building better relationships within an organization, whether it be independent or community. They're usually people who are giving of their time without much in return. So you respect that because your planning allows them to have less stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sort of in mine, one of the things that we've started doing is doing so much more pre-planning before we start going into rehearsals and that sort of thing. Because once you hit rehearsals, it's just full on. And the earlier that you can have that stuff scheduled, the better it is. And the idea of really digging even deeper into community events and community activities that are happening around the place, maybe within a couple of kilometre radius of your venue, or, that sort of thing. It's a great idea, really digging in and looking at that and seeing how you can integrate some of your marketing as part of that event, or tie in with that, or giveaways that can tie in and support that event. You get a little bit of free promotion by giving some free tickets away. You see, we've done it on radio stations before, where we give sort of 3 or 4 sets of family packs away, so that the radio station can promote the show by giving free tickets to families and that sort of thing. And that kind of stuff works a treat. It's free advertising in a way, if you can find someone that's willing to do it. But yeah,
the other thing is publicity with the media. It's, if you go even deeper, it's the research. All this research takes a long time in setting up your content calendar, but it's worth it. Publications have deadlines for editorial.
Of course, yeah.
So you'd put that deadline for whatever publication, it might be a weekly deadline, but you'd put that into your content calendar so that you are sending them whatever relevant story it was that you're pitching to them in due course, rather than the day after deadline and then you're forgotten by the time the next one comes along.
That's right.
Researching on, there's so much to do in Facebook, for instance, all the local suburban groups.
Yes.
Where I am, there's so many that have thousands of followers in their local groups. So you join these groups if it's relevant to you. I'm working from the position here of your theatre company has its geographic placement. Different if the whole thing shifts if you're a touring company.
Well, that's right, yeah.
But yeah, so you're in these groups where there are thousands of people, and some of them will have relevant promotional days. So you record that, only in that thread, this is promo day. So you respect that. You put that in your content calendar. So if you research, do all your research as to what is around you, school fates. So you're getting onto school websites and checking those things out as to what they've got that are coming up that you might be able to get involved with, whether it be in physical space or sponsoring something or whatever. It's just, there's an enormous amount going on that if you've got it in your content calendar, you can be prepared.
Absolutely. And I think the other side to that too, just as a counterbalance to that, is to anyone that's out there thinking about doing this, is do what you can, not everything. It can become so overwhelming. And I think you've touched on it once before, is that idea of really pick the channels that you're going to focus in and do few things very, very well instead of everything at surface level, because those few things that you do really, really well are going to be the thing that get you followers and attention and audience that are willing to stick around. And you can build out the next channel, the next platform, the next school, the next fate, whatever it is, on the next show. Don't think you're going to be able to hit everything in one go. It's just absolutely impossible. So pick the however many things, whether it's 2 or 5 or 7 or 10, whatever it is, pick those few things that you are going to really hone in on hardcore, and just go as hard as you can in those few places and go as deep as possible, because you'll get a better outcome from it in the long term.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. All right, let's go back to what you were talking about earlier. Cast
albums. Okay,
albums.
Now this is, so here's what I see is, let's take Brisbane Musical Theatre Company that has 28 people in the cast.
Yep.
And you release an album of their headshots, yeah? But what I see so often is that each day we will get a different headshot. So they will post, this is Annie, and Annie likes to go to the beach, and Annie's playing this, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
That's it. And we get that for 28 days straight. And
saw this absolutely done recently. Yep.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, but it's not just boring for your audience, but you've missed a great opportunity. Because what happens when Annie's headshot is released? Who shares it?
Just Annie and her friends.
That's it. And it makes no blip on the Instagram the Facebook radar at all. The algorithm doesn't recognize it because, we love Annie, but it's just Annie.
That's
Whereas
right.
if you've got 28 people in an album that you release on Facebook on one day, you suddenly have 20 odd people in a space of a few hours sharing from your page their picture, which is going to thousands. It eventually ends up going to thousands of people. So you release that album 24 to 48 hours before your first ticket release. Our tickets have gone to, your general ticket release.
Yep.
You release that album 24 to 48 hours before that ticketing post. Because of all that engagement,
love it.
You have suddenly opened the floodgates on the algorithm, and that means your next post is going to get more traction.
Yeah,
and
that's
it's not
clever.
necessarily one that anyone would care about as much as their own photo.
Yeah,
you have to set your team up to encourage them to share. So you literally have to ask a cast. Don't expect them to go and share everything from your page. You ask them, you get them involved, and it's just my little tip. It's just
that's a great tip.
Absolute magic.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
It's all in the timing, understanding. If I post here 48 hours, I'm going to get a flip into the next feed with my ticketing.
That's genius. The idea of doing an album with everybody in it at once that's released and just gets that surge all at the same time. That's genius. I'm definitely going to take that up. The other thing I've done just for various bits of content is I actually pull a little support team together outside of the cast and crew. So it might be friends and family, and I hit them up and go, hey, look, I'm coming up to do this show or whatever. On this particular day, I'm going to be sharing this particular post. Can I get you to jump in and share it when that goes out? And just hit people up to share it for me ahead of time. And if they agree and say yes, then that gives me the caveat to be able to release that post, send them a reminder and say, hey, I've just released that post. Can you jump in and share it for me? And it just starts getting that post out all around that same time. Similar sort of thing to try and drive it a little bit faster. But anything you can do like that, little hacks are great.
The other part of that sharing of that album is it's going to your cast's family and friends, rather than just, in other words, it's going to non-theatre people, if you like. So they're going to have a few hundred people that aren't part of your theatre industry, which is your primary goal.
That's it.
All too often we're still
grow the audience
to our peers. We want to get out into the community because they're waiting to spend their money with you. They just don't know you exist.
Exactly. Any other kind of last thoughts and tips on content scheduling and preparation?
Just
preparation.
Just do it. It just save you an enormous amount of time. So brand your style guide. Same colors, same fonts. If that's all you do, that's enough. That's a start. Consistency. That's the one thing that we haven't touched on. The consistency of posting. Don't post at random times, different times, different days every week. Your audience are expecting some consistency, but the consistency is also good for algorithms. So if you're going to post into your Instagram feed 3 times a week, make it the same time, same days each week. Stories, not so much. That can be any time you like.
Definitely.
And that will be driven, all of this is driven by when your audience is most online. And on Instagram, if you don't even use a scheduler, you just want to know on Instagram, pop into the insights section of your Instagram profile, and it will tell you the days under your audience. Scroll to the bottom and it's got the different days of the week, and it's got a little graph as to when most people are most online. The highest point of that, you want to go back 1 bar. So you're leading into the highest part of that curve and post then. So do it the same time, same week. Same with Facebook. Be consistent. You might post 3 times a day on Facebook. That's an awful lot of content to create, but let's go to say once a day. If you're not sure or you don't have a big enough account that the insights are yet working for you enough, post at between 10 and 11 on a weekday. So Tuesday to Thursday. Friday afternoons are a dead loss because no one really cares. They're on to other things. Sunday early evening is great because people have wound down and they're relaxing and they're scrolling through their feeds. It's important to know at the moment that COVID, and that's when we're recording this, COVID has changed audience behavior considerably.
Yes, true.
But it still is responding to consistency, and the times have changed slightly. So you need to, experiment, and that doesn't hurt to experiment. When you throw things out and post, it's not forever, that you haven't ruined or broken anything if it's not right. Do it, try a different day. So when you start an account, that's what you do. When I start a brand new account for a client, I post I post a lot, but I post at different times and I watch the behaviors. So that I can actually learn, when is this particular audience online, what do they respond to? When you're in Facebook going through your insights, you look at the different type of posts that you've created, and you'll see some get a spike in engagement. Now that could be to do with time, but it also could be the type of content. Watch it, take note of it, and create more of that. So there are tools there that are telling us how to do this. You've just got to watch them. Just don't go randomly shotgunning everything around and waiting for something to stick on the wall, because you're just going to wear yourself out.
Yeah, and that was the thing that sort of popped into my mind when you said that about experimenting, is I've heard people sort of deny the kind of consistency argument because they're experimenting. And I would say that it's only an experiment if you're going back and looking at the data and making decisions based on that. Otherwise, you're just using a scattergun approach. And, I'll be honest, I'm getting to the point where I'm getting better because my scheduling tool broke. I fell off the content scheduling bandwagon, and it's been ad hoc like crazy for the last couple of months. Well, I have. I've just gotten back into that new scheduling tool and started getting back into the process of scheduling, and it just gives me so much more peace. Like I just feel more relaxed knowing that I've got stuff done and ready to go out, and I don't have to constantly be thinking, what am I going to do next? Just makes
it's
such
important
a difference.
for people to know they're not going to break anything. I mean, there are rules to, and this is a whole different podcast, but your framework as to what you post. We'll tackle that another time. Definitely. But you're not going to break anything. Just start, just begin and experiment and watch and have some fun with it.
I agree.
You can do so much with social media and promoting.
I'm going to take a line from Gary Vaynerchuk and say, don't overthink it either. I think we get so caught up in, how will this respond? The reality is, if you are posting consistently, if you put something out that doesn't post or doesn't generate a lot of engagement, who cares? It doesn't matter. Move on, post the next thing, but don't, unless it's really controversial and it's going to cause more problems for you, don't go back and delete stuff. You're just wasting time. And the reality is that post might hit someone later. It just might not have been relevant for those people that saw it at that time. And don't overthink it. Don't waste time going back, and unless it's going back to analyze and look at data and metrics, but don't overjudge yourself for the stuff that you put out. If it's done from that point of being, trying to support the show that you're doing or the work that you're doing outside of that show, generally to build the company, you just have to trust that it is the long-term game that's going to help you win in the end. Consistency, as you say, is so key to actually winning. It becomes monotonous. It can become boring. It can feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, but it is that consistency that's going to actually drive results for you in the long term. So final thought, you touched earlier just about the idea of some of those Instagram profiles that are very curated in regards to the way that they look. Some people put a white border around their image, and they've, given it a particular Instagram filter, so they all have the same sort of color wash on them. What's your stance on having to do something like that to create a consistent look and feel for what you're doing?
Well, that's an interesting point you raised, because I just read some stats that have come in that are discussing the impact of COVID. As I said before, audience behaviors. The highly curated feed was the beginning of Instagram. That's what it was about. It was about the photo. Data's shown now that that is less of an issue. Now, if you're an influencer, a fashion line, any of those things, obviously, but people or audience are now tending towards more authentic, a little less curated. Now, when you say curated, it doesn't have to be the same filter. It doesn't have to be the white border. If that's your style, you might be a photographer. You might be creating something artistic. It's your style. For a theatre company, you cannot get necessarily using the same filter is not effective when you're doing rehearsal shots and doing all this sort of stuff. It's not necessarily viable. But using in graphics, your quote cards, any of those things, using the same font and color, ironically, even though your photographers, your photographs are going to be different, different color content.
Yeah.
Once it's interspersed, when you've designed the layout, it still works. So curation really comes down to more that consistency of visual brand again on, even a minimal level. But no, the data shows that people are sort of tending towards more authenticity rather than the overproduced there's a lack of confidence coming into that sort of thing now, the lack of trust.
People are very over the fake guru kind of concept and the fakeness that comes with a lot of that stuff. So it makes complete sense.
And who wants to do that anyway? That doesn't show values. And
you got bigger issues if that's how you have to live. Quite frankly, it's
a type of account, sure, but it's not. It doesn't really fit into theatre. It doesn't show life.
No, I think that's good. Yeah, I mean, I don't subscribe to that. Sometimes though, I do look at my Instagram feed and think, what a mess! What a mess! Sometimes I look at it and I'm just disgusted. It just looks horrible.
That's when I'm saying building those templates in Canva of, when you do a quote card, it's always this style. When you do a video in there and you want to frame either end, it's always that. It's simplifying and I think consistency. That's it.
Some consistencies that thread through the whole feed overall are the key points. Yeah,
that's
brilliant.
Right.
Love it. You've touched on some gold today. Good stuff. Once again, thank you so much for being on the show. I love having these chats.
Always
it's great.
Fun. Yeah.
And we'll get that download for you and we'll stick it in the show notes, and that'll be a link in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast, head to pauladams.com.au/5. I think this is the 5th one, is it? 4. /4. Go to pauladams.com.au/4, and I will start putting show notes together. I hadn't planned on doing that, but I will now. And I'm only saying pauladams.com.au because that's the other website I have. So I haven't thought about a website.
It'll be in the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes. Yeah, let's check the show notes. I'll transcribe the whole episode and try and boost SEO. So brilliant. So really great stuff in there. Planning ahead, planning forward, so important. Not being afraid of the lack of spontaneity because it's still spontaneous for the person that sees it. Don't get bogged down by the monotony. Don't feel like you've got to mix things up all the time. Consistency is key to actually driving results in the long term. And the style guide, massive issue. Make sure you've got one that you can refer back to. All right, very good. Another great episode. Thank you so much for being on. And if you're out there, feel free to share this with your friends. Tell the world that we're talking about marketing for theatre. We'd love to have you come along. And thanks very much. We'll see you on the next one.